pertinent looking at the interim market, and it's funny, whenever you look at any industry, it's a bit like a rabbit going down a rabbit hole. You suddenly realise there's a whole new world out there, so thanks for bringing that to life. What I want to do is bring to life just the NFP context a little bit. Just 3 quick bullet points. Firstly, when I started working with interim managers about 10 years ago, I thought it was all about maternity cover. So, you know, you had an FD, they went on maternity leave, and needed someone to fill the gap. And I think historically, interim management perhaps was in that space. However, as you've seen with the slides with Jason, it's changed out of all recognition. And nowadays it's much more about transformation. It's about organisations going through a step change. It's a realisation, to the second point, that interim management, it can be a planned resource. It doesn't have to just be, we've got a crisis, we've got someone going on maternity leave. But to the third point, it's still a distress purchase. And I'm going to share some examples, and the whole point of my little bit here is just to bring to life some real-life examples of how we've deployed interim management into the charity sector. And you'll see that very often it is because you've been on the board and there's an issue, and it's a bit like the 18, you don't know where else to go to find it, but actually, you know, you can go to these guys and they can, or girls, and they can sort it out for you. What I would say before is that with a distress purchase, I always ask the question, why has the organisation got into distress? Now, sometimes, as Jason alluded to, the Chief Executive dies. That's an extreme case, but there are cases like that that we've worked on. And it's out of your control. But very often, the reason the organisation has got into distress is because there's failure of governance, and the board have not been engaged with the decisions that have been going on. They've not been perhaps asking the right questions, probing the executive, if there is a big executive. And so all of a sudden these issues have suddenly come to the surface, but actually they've been rumbling on for a while. And so if you're a chair of an organisation, there is a sort of challenge there to make sure that you really are informed and you know exactly what's going on within the organisation. So let me give you some real life sort of case studies, and in some cases I can use the names of the organisations, others I can't, because if they are distress purchases, the client doesn't want people to know that they've had to get an interim. And I just want to start with 2 or 3 recent roles we've done. These are all Chief Executive interim appointments. And as chairs of organisations, or as on the board of an organisation, that's very often the one that you're going to have to deal with. It might be an FD, but very often it will be an interim Chief Exec. And in 2 cases here, it's because the Chief Exec was fired. Now, the first case was about 6 months ago. I was at a conference in Berlin, and I got a phone call from the chair of an organisation, very well-known organisation, who simply said, enough's enough, we're going to have to let go of the Chief Executive. I've recruited this chair. This was the 4th chair in 3 years. So you can see there were some things not quite right. And the scenario was the Chief Executive had been in post for 15 years. And even there, that raises a question about succession planning, objectivity, refreshment, etc. And really was a loose cannon within the organisation. Now, externally, very well respected in the press and the media. However, with some of the key stakeholders, some of the funders, there were some real concerns beginning to rankle. And the fact that she'd got through 4 chairs in 3 years speaks volumes about the relationship between the board and the Chief Executive. And so I've got a name for the interim we put in, not a proper name, I'm giving a name to each of them. I call this interim a smooth operator. So this interim came in, and we had an interim lined up, the Chief Executive was fired, an interim came in and immediately just reassured the organisation. The senior management team were like rabbits caught in the headlights. They hadn't expected it to happen. So there was something about wrapping the arms around the team, but then very quickly smoothing relationships with all the key stakeholders. 6 months on, new Chief Executives being recruited, the organisation's in a really good place. The second one happened about 5 months ago in a very similar scenario where this organisation was launched with great fanfare during the Labour years, huge sums of money, And by the way, a lot of the interims we've got are not with really big organisations, they're with quite small ones as well, so it does straddle all sides of the economy. And I met with the chair just in one of the rooms on the other side of this building, and he said, look, we went out to recruit a permanent chief executive 10 months ago, and quite frankly, it's just not worked. She seemed good, but what she's done is she was like a new broom. She got rid of the senior management team. She then brought in some sort of consultant type people, not interims, she brought in some consultant type people who effectively became like her senior management team. She herself became really removed from the day-to-day management of the organisation and left it to the consultants, who in turn have just created a real mess, and the culture is such that morale is absolutely on rock bottom. And he said, we're going to have to, she's on holiday, but when she gets back next week, we're going to have to find her, we need an interim to come in and take over. And so we found a fantastic interim. He wanted to basically fire the chief executive in the morning, and then she'd walk out the door and then he'd wheel in the new chief executive straight away. The interim chief executive and I both said that's probably a little bit too, I don't know what the right adjective is, that's just a bit too much. I think you're too full on. Just maybe give it a day or two and then say, look, we've got plans and it's all going to work out, and he smooth that over. And this interim has gone in, and she's absolutely fantastic. She's got a personality and a style that just says, it's almost like a figurehead, it's going to be okay, I'm here, it's fine. And confidence has grown. They've just hired a fantastic FD, and just about to appoint a new chief executive. Great success story. The other chief exec one, this is at the other end of the scale, massive organisation, 100 million turnover a year, big international development, and but losing market share. Now, I say market share, we're talking about charities. It has a non-profit foundation, but it's involved in certain commercial enterprises, and it was really hemorrhaging cash, and they needed someone to come in and run this organisation, something like 2,000 staff. Interestingly, you would think you'd bring in a big kind of NFP CEO type person. We brought in somebody, and Jason and I worked this job together, we brought in someone with a big business background who was what I'm calling, oh by the way, that second person I'm calling the culture curer, and this person I'm calling the tanker turnarounder. I know there's no such word as turnarounder, but it was the only thing I could think of that made any sense. But it's a huge organisation. How do we get market share again? How do we look at our business modelling? How do we deal with the legacy of a good number of public sector workers who have been tutored over, that actually the culture there and the culture there is just not fitting and gelling together? And so we brought in a big business beast type of person. Should have called that a business beast, that works. So that was a good result. A couple of examples on the finance side. This is the other one where the board will often get involved. One is a real life example you've got on your seats. Mind, we all know Mind Mental Health Charity, fantastic charity doing incredible work. Brilliant Director of Finance and Resources, but due to personal reasons had to suddenly withdraw for 10 months. But the problem was, it left the organisation facing some really critical challenges because there was nobody under her that could step up to the plate and deliver some mission critical things. What were they? One was the implementation of a brand new CRM system. And if you've ever been involved in the implementation of a CRM system, as we have in our business, even for a small business, it can be very, very challenging. So that was just about to kick off. There was a big office move going on. There was some huge work with a trading subsidiary and some business modelling and other things going on. And all of this was just about to happen, and the FD says, I've got to be gone for 10 months, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. I met with Paul Farmer, the CEO of Mind, and we sat down having coffee somewhere, and he said, just remind me, how does this interim thing work? And once I was able to explain in the way that Jason did, this is how we contract and do, very quickly we brought in an interim who effectively just picked up all those loose balls, drove it forward, integrated himself really well with the board, and actually it was a fantastic success story. The interim FD then came back. It was a great job. Just to Jason's point about sudden death, we were doing a job recently for a very well-known charity, and coming to their year end. The FD, incredible, really, really good person, had a heart attack on his motorbike on the way home. Died, finished. And you think, crikey, that, I mean, you can't plan for something like that. And so a week later we had an interim FD and then actually an interim company secretary. We split the roles and had 2 people go in, and they're still working with this organisation doing a terrific job. The other one is an organisation, again, it's in your case studies, called Family Action, quite well known, family support. The FD left very suddenly, but they needed, it was during the time of the last comprehensive spending review, so massive reduction in cuts, grants, contracts, all sorts of things going on. They needed an FD with a commercial background that could come in and do some cost reductions, look at the business modelling, think things through. He helped implement an organisational restructure, improve their tendering processes, and that organisation now is doing very well. In fact, I met last week with the Group HR Director, who, it's a very incestuous world in the charity sector. I also recruited to be chair of the charity that I'm a trustee of. So anyway, we had a catch up, and I said, how's Phil getting on? He said, he's great, he's still with us. He ended up going sort of permanent, but he's just about now to move on. But again, an organisation in real distress, and there's